Good morning. Welcome to the Southern California Leadership Council's press conference on the Los Angeles Wildfire and Comparative Study. We'll get started in a couple minutes. We're just going to allow our guests to all join. We see folks are joining by Zoom, so we're going to give them a couple minutes to get logged in. And once we have that, we'll get the press conference going. Wonderful. I see that we have a lot of participants joining us. Good morning. My name is Stephen Chung. I'm the CEO for the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation. It's an honor and delight to welcome you all to this virtual press conference to release the impact of the 2025 Los Angeles Wildfire and Comparative Study. Today, we have with us Governor Gray Davis, who is a co-chair for the Southern California Leadership Council, as well as Los Angeles County Board of Supervisor Chair, Supervisor Catherine Barger, who is also the co-chair for the Southern California Leadership Council. Governor Davis, would you like to kick us off?
Thank you, Steve, and thank you so much for putting together this remarkable report, which I believe everyone has or has access to. I want to thank Mike Roos and Rich Lambros of SCLC for their cooperation with you, Steve, and your team. So Steve's report says very clearly that speed matters in the recovery process, particularly from an economic perspective. I also want to remind people it makes an enormous difference from a human perspective. We all have a new sense of what home is about after these fires. Home is a place we all want to be. Home is a treasure trove of memories and shared experiences. Job number one is to help people rebuild and get back to their new home, whether that's a rebuilt home or some other home outside of the fire areas. But most people, we believe, will want to gravitate back to the neighborhoods in which they previously lived. The second thing I want to point out is we have to learn the lessons of this fire and earlier fires in California and elsewhere. We have to build homes better. We have to harden homes. Happily, Sacramento was providing incentives, cash incentives, low-income, low-interest loans. It may be possible to work out arrangements with insurance companies, but we want to make it in the interest of the homeowner to do everything he or she can to harden and protect their home so we don't repeat this terrible tragedy that befell us about a month ago. The third point I want to make is there's so many good people in California that have just done great things to help their neighbors. So we're fortunate enough to have a housekeeper. She lives with her sister, who's a housekeeper. The housekeeper was literally in a home of a 91-year-old in the Palisades when the fire started. She got him in her car, had some difficulty. We got out of Pasadena, went down to Malibu where another client's home was destroyed, put her in the car. She was 93. They had no place to go. They spent the next 8 days as guests of my housekeeper and her sister. And that just shows you everybody wants to do all they can to be helpful. Other signs of people caring. Well over $700 million has been contributed from people largely outside of California. That means they have a special place in their heart for this state and this city. So we're not going this alone. Finally, I just want to emphasize the importance of investing in the homes that we're rebuilding. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again. And we rebuild the homes exactly the way they were. They're going to be at least as likely to burn down as they were before. So let's learn the lessons. There's a lot of universities working on this, a lot of information to harden roofs, to have sprinklers on the outside of the house as well as on the inside. Lots of lessons that can greatly enhance the safety of people. But first and foremost, help them rebuild, help them come home, and we will have done our job. So with that, Steve, I know you're going to introduce Catherine Barger, and I just want to say to the people of Altadena and the people who were victimized by the Eden fire, there is no better elected official that I know of than Catherine Barger to work for you. So you're in. I know that you're dealing with a lot of difficulty here, but you could not have a better advocate than Supervisor Barger.
Thank you, Governor Davis. And I agree with that sentiment. We've seen Supervisor Barger day in, day out over the last 52 days, front and center, really addressing the various issues and the challenges that we face as a county. So thank you for your leadership, Supervisor Barger.
Well, first of all, thank you, Governor Davis, for those comments. That means a lot to me. And Stephen, thank you for putting this all together. And good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. We're here to discuss really a critical issue, especially as it relates to my constituents, one that has left lasting scars on our communities, our economy, and the lives of so many across Los Angeles County. The 2025 Eden and Palisades fires were devastating, to say the least, not only in terms of physical destruction, but also in the economic hardships they created for families, small businesses, and entire industries. That's why today's unveiling of the study is so important. Commissioned by the Southern California Leadership Council and conducted by the LAEDC Institute for Applied Economics, this report provides the first comprehensive analysis of the true cost of the wildfires, looking at it comprehensively. More importantly, it lays out urgent, data-driven recommendations to help us recover faster and build a resilience against future disasters. For me, this report is clear in communicating that our strongest path forward is expediting the rebuilding of our homes, businesses, and communities. And I echo what Governor Davis said about building back better and smarter. And we can do it, and we can do it in a way that reflects the priorities of those that are focused on the environment, but also the concerns that insurance companies express regarding building in high fire zones. But make no mistake, I am laser focused on streamlining our county's rebuilding process and fast tracking the redevelopment of infrastructure and houses. I want to thank our partners for their leadership and commitment to this work. Let's dive into these findings and discuss how we turn these insights into action, using this as a roadmap moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. At this point, I'm going to provide a quick overview in terms of the reports. I just want to let the audience know that the reports itself, as well as the recording for this press conference, will be available on our website shortly after at laedc.org, which I will put at the end of the presentation as well. And we will email all the attendees with the links. To get us started, I'm just going to share my screen and give you a quick presentation so you have more visuals alongside with what we're talking about. Governor, if you don't mind, can you let me know whether you can see the screen?
I can.
Perfect, wonderful.
Looks good.
Excellent. This analysis, again, was conducted by the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, LAEDC's Institute for Applied Economics. This is quick action by the Southern California Leadership Council's leadership group, immediately reaching out to LAEDC in the first days of the fire, really asking for the information and data that's necessary for us to start thinking about deploying resources. Over the last few months, you've been hearing numbers of economic damage ranging from $50 billion to $250 billion. It's a good estimate, but unfortunately, we're not able to really deploy the resources accurately based on that. So very quickly, with limited data information, LAEDC conducted this report to give you a bit more insights. And so we're delighted to be able to share some of this initial finding. I do want to provide you with a bit of the methodology and also the caveat in terms of the limitation of this study. What we tried to do is looking at the CAL FIRE maps that were available. We did a GIS application and took the map and overlaid with this existing data that's available. But this data is not at all comprehensive. There's a lot of self-reported data. So this report really gives you the beginning of understanding what the impact can look like. Because of the Southern California Leisure Council, SCLC's investment into this report and also advocacy to make sure that we're able to continue to push for better data. We're now in the process of working very closely with the Los Angeles County Department of Economic Opportunity to receive accurate, up-to-date data. So hopefully in the future, we can give you more insight into this report. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the scope of the work. As we all know, the 9 wildfires over the course of January of this year, including Archer, Hearst, Kenneth, Lydia, Sunset, and Sunswept. And of course, we have the Palisades and the Altadena fire as well, the Eden fire as well. Combined together, these 9 fires consumed more than 50,000 acres for this entire region. Now, this report in particular are focused on the Paradise and the Eden fire. What we've seen is that based on our assessments, there are about 19,884 parcels located within the 2 burn areas that we'll be focusing on today. And the other fires combined together, there are about 300 parcels that are there. So that's why the focus for this report is really on the Eden and the Paradise fire. Sorry, the Palisades fire. And in looking at the information, we also saw, based on the assessed value of the properties located within those 2 maps, at the minimum, we've seen that the property valuation in that area, in those areas, are about $28 billion. But when you look at the estimated market value, now that number goes up to $53.8 billion. So the range of the property valuation of the property damage and potential impact could be anywhere from $28 to $53.8 billion in total. Specifically focusing on the business side, LAEDC has been tracking very closely the number of businesses that are located within the Eden and the Palisades fire. And you can see that there are, based on our information from 2022, 2023, there are 1,863 individual businesses located within the 2 burn zones. I do want to note this is within the burn zones. There are areas that are impacted outside of the burn zone, like Santa Monica, like Pasadena, but they were not within the burn zone. So at this point, we're just focusing this study on it. There are going to be impacts because there are businesses, for example, that have disruption because of power failure or water disruption over the course of January. That's not included within this report. But again, this is at a minimum, just what we would like to get started with looking at the potential damage. And of the 1,863 businesses, we found that they employ about 9,610 people within these 2 zones. Looking at their previous sales, they generated about $1.4 billion in sales just last year. So if they're disrupted, you can imagine that's not going to come back immediately. Now, as we're looking at the impact and what the recovery period is going to look like, we've been tracking the FEMA timeline in terms of what recovery can look like. And based on the information, we can see that if there are going to be additional delays, it can slow our ability to recover. So based on that information, we looked into various scenarios. If we're able to recover more quickly, what that impact's going to look like, to if there are going to be additional delays because of supply chain delays or because of permitting delays, then you can have additional challenges to recovering quickly. In all the scenarios, we just assume that the first year, because of the extent of the fire and the properties that have been destroyed, that the first year, all 3 scenario will basically estimate that in 2025, you're going to basically have about a 90% reduction in terms of the sales revenue and about 85% of the job reduction based on the disruption that we've seen. So with that, we know at a minimum, for those areas alone and those companies alone, there's about at least $1.26 billion of sales revenue that will be removed from this economy over the next year. And there are about 8,200 jobs that might be at risk. But if you're looking at the recovery period, if we're able to basically within the first year by January 2026, if we can move forward with resuming some of the business activities, we are looking at now a 5-year timeline of full recovery by 2029, hopefully. But if that's going to be the case, then looking at the economic impact, you see in scenario 1, it's going to take 1 year to basically start the recovery. And in scenario 2, it's going to take 2 years to start the recovery. And in scenario 3, it's going to take 3 years to start the recovery. You can then see we're expecting that timeline of full recovery to be stretched out. And what we're hoping to do is to see 100% return to the baseline of output and before the disasters. So looking at those numbers, this is where the report will give you a bit more information. We're looking at a minimum of about $4.6 billion in economic impact. This is direct, indirect, and induced spending for this entire region that might be at risk at a minimum in scenario 1 over the course of 5 years. And of that $4.6 billion, there are about 24,990 jobs that might be at risk. And this will actually impact about $1.9 billion in labor wages and about $730 million in potential taxes that will be lost because we're needing to figure out the timeline for the recovery. If that timeline gets extended to scenario 3, then that impact can go all the way up to $8.9 billion, impacting potentially 49,000 jobs in this region, directly impacting about $3.7 billion in wages and about $1.4 billion in taxes combined together. So that's a quick highlight of information. I will be happy to answer any additional questions you might have. I just also want to highlight that there's another separate component to this, is that we did a comparative analysis with some of the other fires in recent years, including the Marshall, the Camp, and the Lahaina fire. And we took some lessons learned. And as Governor Davis was mentioning, and as Supervisor Barger was mentioning as well, recovery is really dependent on the speed of recovery. So if we're able to coordinate the services and be able to work hand in hand with each other, we can mitigate the damages. And we hope to really look at a scenario 1 situation where we can mitigate the negative damage to this entire region. I will stop sharing the screen. And at this point, I know that the audience members, you have the ability to do Q&A and also raise your hand. If you have any questions about the study, we would be delighted to answer your questions. I see Doug, you have your hand raised. I will bring you on screen. Doug, can you please state which organization you're with, and then please address your question.
Doug Smith from the Los Angeles Times.
Thank you, Doug.
So I noticed that your number of homes was considerably more than the number listed in the DINS data, the CAL FIRE data. And I understand from what you said that you used a perimeter and took every parcel within that perimeter. And so my question is, why did you include then parcels where the structure was not destroyed?
So at this point, this is as we're looking at it, the preliminary data. What we want to do is look at the scope of the potential damage. From a property perspective, we want to make sure that we're listing the information that's out there. Later on, as we're assessing the value, again, when we have more information about, because in the report, you also saw that there are the properties that are damaged, including commercial property, or also there are utilities and infrastructure structures that includes sheds and other things that might not have the same value as a home. So we're just basically putting there for reference at this point. Later on, as we're assessing the potential impact when it comes to financial impact, we're looking at it a bit more deeply. But again, this report is just to give us a bit more the parameters so that we can analyze the data a bit later. Does that answer your question, Doug?
Yes.
Thank you.
And let me just add one point. Mike Roos and I asked Steve in early January, 2 or 3 days after the fires erupted, if he could provide a report for us for our first meeting, which was on February 13th. So he did a remarkable job in a very short period of time, and all these things are dynamic and will be adjusted, as new data comes in. But the most important lesson to me from his report is that the longer it takes to get people back in their home or back in a new home, the more costly it's going to be, not only for the victim, but for the city, the county, and the state. So everyone has a vested interest. We can't move at warp speed, but as fast as we can move, that will help people victims develop a peace of mind, a return to a new home. That will sort of mark the end of the disaster for them. But until they're in a new home or in a new place, the disaster will continue. So from a human perspective, there's nothing more important than to move with all due deliberate speed.
I have a question from Phil. Phil, yes, the full recording of this forum alongside with the report will be available on our website at laedc.org. We'll make sure that it's on the front banner so it's easy for folks to download and be able to access. And we should have this ready. The report will be ready immediately, but the recording, if you can give us at the end of the day, we will make sure that it's posted before the end of the day. I also see Sid was asking, 5-year timeline for economic recovery. How much tax money do you estimate will be needed to rebuild? That is a analysis that we haven't done currently. What we're looking at is basically how much taxes will be impacted by the businesses and the business interruption within those areas. I do want to highlight what I mentioned earlier is that this analysis only looked at the burn zones and the companies within the burn zones. This is not including the other businesses that are disrupted in the surrounding regions as well. So in terms of how much tax dollars will be needed, we don't know that at this point. Once we have, hopefully, as I was mentioning, with a partnership with the County of Los Angeles Department of Economic Opportunity, when we have more detailed data, we will be releasing another report, and we'll definitely consider this question as something that we can answer as well. I have Mary on the line. I'm inviting you to please join and unmute yourself. Mary?
Hi. Thank you so much. This report, I am very appreciative of all the details that are in there. We've heard this morning how important this first year is in terms of keeping the economic impact as sort of low as possible. I'm wondering what your, I know we're just 6 weeks out, but where do you think, with the suggestions that were made, where do you think we are on target? And what are the areas that you are most concerned about not sort of happening on top?
And unfortunately, I see that a supervisor actually has a board meeting that she has to attend that would actually be best answered by the supervisor. I will step in and try my best to answer that question. As of yesterday, LAEDC, we had our annual economic forecast event to provide information about this report as well as our economic forecast. And we were delighted that Governor Newsom actually joined us for a fireside chat at that point, announced a number of different new initiatives and investments into the wildfire relief efforts. At the same time, he also mentioned that they've been working diligently with the County of Los Angeles and the state of California, and they were able to move forward with phase 1 of the debris removal. So this is an expedited manner, and usually it takes them much longer than this. So it seems that we're able to be progressing quite nicely as we're looking at some of the initial prep steps to get us along. So in my mind, at least, I think we are making good progress, especially comparing with some of the recommended steps from the other fires that we've seen. To your second part of your question, which is what are the things that we need to do, is the collaboration. What we've seen from the other fires is that if the organizations are not able to work collaboratively with each other, they might be stepping on each other's toes and also might actually delay the process. So it's imperative for this entire region to have a coordinated response effort. At the same time, also start thinking about the long-term recovery. As we've seen with the other fires, the recovery process is not going to be overnight. It's going to be years. So we really have to pace out the process, but at the same time allocate enough staffing and resources so that you have the ability to actually coordinate in the long run. Otherwise, some of those coordinating efforts might fizzle, and at that point, we're going to run into the same problem again.
And there's, these fires teach us different lessons. So I had two relatives living in Paradise. I don't know if you've been to Paradise. Everyone thinks it's like Beverly Hills, but it's basically a bunch of campers and people just enjoy the outdoor beauty. So my two relatives were living separately. They both got in their car to evacuate, but there was only one lane in and one lane out because the city council wanted people to stop and shop. Okay, that's fine to help the business community, but 13 people were incinerated in their car as they tried to flee the flames, and 84 people died. So evacuation routes need to be top of mind, as well as and balanced against what incentives they want to provide, local government wants to provide to their business communities, because at some point in the next 10, 20, 30 years, there will be a natural disaster of some sort that will require people to exit the city or the county rapidly, to say nothing of getting fire engines and first responders enough room to get their vehicles. So cooperation, as Stephen said, between city, county, and state leaders is just paramount to make sure we get this right. The worst thing we can do is just rebuild exactly what was in Altadena and in the Palisades, and not harden any equipment, not come up with fire resilient roofs, not do anything to improve the resilience of the new structures. That would just be a waste of everyone's time and money.
See that we have about 3 minutes left. We have time for probably one more question. I see that John has asked, you mentioned all the tax revenue and job loss. Will some of it be offset by increased construction work with homes and businesses replaced? Yes, in short, that's a short answer. But if we're able to quickly help the businesses transition into other modes of operation. So for example, for those companies within Palisades or Eaton fire that have been displaced, if they're able to find other locations, hopefully within Los Angeles County, then that they will be able to generate tax revenue and maybe even bring the jobs to that region. So yes, there will be some replacement there. At the same time, when it comes to construction work, it could be offset, but one of the things that's going to be difficult is when you look at a disaster, and we've looked at the various fires as I was mentioning, you see a drastic drop in economic productivity. So even though you're getting an influx in construction money coming in, you're still starting at a very low point. So it will be offset a little bit, but what we need to do is the construction work, it's not going to start immediately, and it might take a bit of time. One of the things that we addressed yesterday during the economic forecast is some of the additional national and international challenges that we have to face. As we're looking at construction, if there are tariffs, for example, that will increase the price of lumber and steel, this can be potentially really devastating for this region as we're looking at recovery, because we have the same dollars, but now things are going to cost more. Additionally, when it comes to construction, another thing to really pay attention to based on our discussion yesterday is workforce development. Do we have enough construction workers here to be able to do the work? Right now in Los Angeles, a lot of our construction worker, the entire workforce development pipeline, many of them are actually migrant workers as well. So if there are any policy changes from the national government, this can potentially change the way that we're able to quickly recover. So there are a lot of complicated issues that are at hand, but the short answer is yes, it could be offset. What we're hoping to do is do more than offset. We hope to recover and be able to bring in additional industries that will basically help this entire region rebuild. We're now at 10:59. Governor Davis, would you like to provide any closing remarks?
Yes, I want to thank everyone for participating. not only from LAEDC, but all the press. I mean, I moved from the Bronx. I was born in Columbia Hospital and moved to Brentwood many, many years ago. So I feel particularly close to the Palisades. As governor, I went to more than one July 4th parade there. It's a wonderful community, and I know we have the resolve and determination to rebuild, get people back in a better frame of mind, and to prove to the rest of the world that LA can rise again.
Thank you so much, Governor. And the webinar as well as the report will be available on our website at laedc.org. Again, the taping will be available at the end of the day. The report's immediately available for your consumption. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us and contact us directly. My email is steven.chung@laedc.org. And you can also find it on the website. Thank you for joining us. Looking forward to working with you in the future. Have a great day.